Hi, I'm Chris Grimm, founder, coach, principal consultant of RA Consulting. For 24 years, we've been serving leaders and their teams around the world. This podcast, which I wanted to call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but it's called And Then I, is nothing scripted, nothing fancy. I promise that we'll be talking about successes and failures. It's the gold, I call it, that you find only in real stories with real leaders in real time. With that, I invite you to sit back, soak up the wisdom here of these everyday superheroes. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to And Then I'm Chris Grimm. And like always, I am joined by a superhuman, one that I'm very excited to introduce you to, probably for different reasons than some of the other people I have brought to you. As you know, sometimes I interview C-levels that I have been through the fire with, very common. Sometimes I invite people who are other consultants or people who are just doing really interesting things. And the man I'm going to introduce you to today is kind of an interesting combination of all of those things. And I was thinking about how I was going to introduce you, Nathan. So in a minute, I'm going to pass the baton to you. But everyone, I just want you to understand that you should settle in and listen or watch this whole thing to the end because, first of all, one of the most humble, unassuming, underestimated humans that I've ever met. And I think we're about year 10 or so here since we first met. We can talk about that later. Has created for himself what looks and feels like a fun, interesting, diverse life where he gets to well, it looks like you do everything that you want to do, Nathan. And I don't know if that's going to be part of the way you describe yourself, but everybody listening and watching, I coach a lot of people. I work with a lot of groups, and it is common that I hear people wishing they could have a life with lots of income streams and travel and do interesting, amazing things, and often feel like they can't. And today you are going to hear from someone who maybe never had the I can't and is doing it. So I am happy to introduce you to Mr. Nathan Love, live from Seattle. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, thanks, Chris. No, that's great. I have to update my LinkedIn with some of those quotes. That's great. No, it's great to talk to you again. It's been a couple years when we worked directly, but it's great to have a friend that's still very active in the space. And every time I run into you, it's a great experience, and you're very well connected with a lot of different people as well. So it's great.
Yeah. So I want maybe you to start and tell your story. And so everyone, just to be clear, this man has an amazing job, which he'll talk to you about. That's a formidable, important job in a big company as his day job. He also has things that I used to think were side hustles, but there's so much more than that. And so diversified and so interesting that I want to make sure at some point in time, Nathan, we double click into the fact that I think you have one of the best networks of anybody that I know. And it seems fertile, like you are able to really leverage it. So I'm going to shut up and ask you, Nathan, to maybe start and tell your story.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And that's, I would say that you have the best network. So it's a huge compliment that I do have a very diverse network that is, which I would like to think that it's continued education, right? So going back maybe to start with college, and that's kind of where things started. There is a great experience there where I made kind of a very diverse set of friends. So I went to Willamette University in Oregon and just studied a very general rhetoric and media studies and economics double major. And really there, I was involved in the cross-country track program. So I was very active with the athletes. I was involved in a fraternity. I was in Sigma Chi, but I was also IFC president of all the fraternities, as well as I was on the debate team. And really, if you look at a Venn diagram, that is pretty much the whole 99% of the campus. And we actually threw a 10-year reunion many years ago, and it had the highest percentage of people actually coming back for it because we rallied. We actually got some sponsors to give gift bags, and it was just an exciting time to catch up with a lot of friends. But to your point, I'd like to think, even today with a lot of both startups, being on a couple boards, involved in, I work for T-Mobile now, which is a great company building the biggest 5G network in the world. That basically we are trying to show some value, but I love being involved in so many different things that it helps complement, just like an education, right? It's you're meeting people of all ages. I also am part of the DE&I team company, so you really want to learn from others because you're greater, based on other people's contributions and education and stories. And I would say at Willamette also, and we didn't talk about this before, but in undergrad I studied abroad in Ecuador, so I was have a chance to travel to every country in South America. And then in grad school, I studied abroad in Denmark, and I was able to travel every country in Europe. And those perspectives also just give so much more value to what we're used to here in the States, but also I think there's a lot of value in understanding what other people look at, what they think, how they view different opportunities. And I think that's really, with a couple startups, we can talk about Long Drink and some other things, that's what really contributed to understanding like, hey, this is something that we should bring to the US and that there's value here. So that's kind of the background.
I want to make sure our listeners, people watching, hopefully you're taking a tally here, because we have T-Mobile, the day job, that, by the way, is enough of a thing that most humans could only do that and try to have a life. Number two, which maybe is your number one, I don't know how you talk about these things, but you're a founder, investor, leader in Long Drink.
Which number one, yeah. So Long Drink is the number one drink in Finland. It was created out of the 1952 Olympics, where people wanted drinks before the games. And again, I've gone to not Japan, but 3 Olympics before that. And supporting an old teammate from Willamette, actually, who got 5th in the Olympics in London in the half mile. But yeah, Long Drink basically it's a gin and tonic, 5% alcohol drink, but people wanted mixed drinks. It took too long. So in Finland, they created, this was the Olympics in Helsinki in 52. They created a canned drink where it was pre-made, you could quickly sell it. And it wasn't in the US, right? And this is people, the whole seltzer craze, but we're like, why don't we bring this to the US? And then when you looked at importing with taxes and tariffs, and it was gonna cost so much money. So instead it's like, let's reverse engineer it. Let's make it here. And the first run we did, it's like, if it doesn't work, then we've got a lot of cases of Long Drink here, but it actually was super successful in New York as our starting point. We had a launch party out in Montauk in Long Island, and really from there it expanded. We're in 41 states now, and it's done extremely well in the US. You can find it like Costco and Whole Foods and Bevmo, Trader Joe's, everywhere, right? So that's really a cool experience for us to build on. And the guys running with that are doing amazing. We've got Miles Teller, who was just in Top Gun 2, is our main spokesperson. We have Ricky Fowler, a golfer, Puma, that's done a huge contribution as far as just giving us free press. We've got Kygo, who's a big DJ in Scandinavia. So yeah, that's a whole side thing. And what I'd say is it's great to be on boards or part of these startups that have a huge risk reward potential. And it's fun when they actually reward it. So.
Yeah, okay, but let's not go past that without Nathan and I saw each other in Las Vegas in January for CES. That was this year, right?
Yep. That was.
And when
you throw a great party, by the way, Chris, every year.
Look, that's a whole other thing, everybody, because the network guy here can get you into any party. It's crazy. But back to Long Drink. When I was saying, because you are not a big self-promoter, I knew you for a long time before I ever knew you were associated with Long Drink or about it. And then even when you started talking about it, I don't know, you have this humbleness about you. And then he showed me the video from like the yacht party in Miami. And I was like, wait a minute, this is major. Like, this is so cool. You are,
yeah, no, it's definitely been a fun ride for sure. And it's opened a lot of doors, and the guys that are part of the team are amazing guys. And so it's been a fun journey there. And it's great when you have a day job, pays the health insurance, and you're getting some equity. And T-Mobile also, we'll talk about in a second, is the whole 5G journey. One, has been a great education continued, but also my one customer, Dish, is trying to be the 4th biggest phone company in the US. And so that it's been an amazing journey with the day job, but these side projects also contribute so much for an educational, the further learning, and kind of being around the corner. What's next here, and that's super exciting to be in this place. So
yeah. look, let's go back to your chronological order because that feels important. And then soon I want to talk about where we met because a lot of what you just said kind of showed up in that experience. But let's go back to your chronological.
Sure. Yep. So started, technically I was born in Hawaii on Christmas Eve, on a warm sunny day because it's always nice in Maui. But anyways, long story there. So fast forwarding to college, we talked about Willamette and then jumping over to undergrad, study abroad in Ecuador, grad school, study abroad in Denmark, and then started my first job at Lionsgate film company in Santa Monica. Also something that they don't teach you with an MBA, like film was something where it was a great opportunity to learn kind of something brand new. And I spun off with a couple other people and we started the digital team, digital being, the first Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, and then EST, electronic sell-through and VOD platforms like even iTunes and some of these other small guys at the time, Vudu. We did the first deals, and the first Netflix deal, you look at PricewaterhouseCoopers, like this is a fad, it's going to fail. And I actually had an amazing boss at the time. Like our team was so much fun, and it was an experiment. It's like, it's never going to work, but we grew it to basically being 1/10 of the company's revenue. And it was a great first learning experience. And then from there with Lionsgate, I made the move from Santa Monica, California to New York. And then with New York, we're doing so well that they're like, we need you guys to relocate. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to go back to California because I'm already setting roots down in New York. And then that's when I pivoted to first a small incubator company, almost like a startup. It was called New Video at the time, bought by Cinedigm. Basically, they were converting all of the film theaters in the US from 8mm film to digital. And so, but they needed content. So we basically had the content and we worked with all these aggregators. So think of companies that have tons of old legacy catalogs that they're trying to monetize. So that's what we went into business with. My one biggest partnership there was with Sundance Film Festival. So we converted about 30 years of their films that these filmmakers thought their films were dead. They'd never see the light of day again. We had these deals already in place with Netflix, with the other partners I talked about, both streaming and purchase rental, that basically they had these deals in place where we converted it. And then we had 1 year, they'd see how it did. And if it did well, then, they'd renew it for more money or maybe less, but still, it continued on. And the filmmakers loved it because they thought their film, first of all, was dead. No one would see it again. So it opened up that platform for them to have a new revenue stream, but also, their fans could actually see something that they couldn't see before, right? So it really was a perfect interim, if you will, as I pivoted towards another company in New York called Rovi at the time. And that's really where we come in with TiVo. So Rovi and TiVo was a great, they have a lot of patents around finding content. And that's really how it started. I was part of the ad sales team, ran the ad sales team in New York, and we've had a great experience there. We had very large footprint. We're reaching about 100 million households in the US, and partnerships with a lot of OEMs based in Asia, APAC. So like Samsung and LG were two of our biggest partners that basically you could work with them on, as they're trying to develop with, this is before the apps game even started, but like TVs that they're like, hey, if we had an app here, people could view content specifically. And that was just a new monetary opportunity we're chasing, and big experiment. We also created an apps division with a good friend, Malia, who ran with this, and we built it out, and then we realized, okay, what we originally intended didn't work. So, there's a lot of changes there, but the whole thing was a great experiment, great time. And part of my fun there too was I got to ring the NASDAQ bell with our team. We had our anniversary for TiVo. So yeah, New York was a great experience working with Rovi and with TiVo. And Chris, that's, I think, a segue into how we met. So
yeah. So this is the story, everybody, that I tell about Nathan to people if we're somewhere, and I say, Aria was running a high potential program at Rovi. And for anybody who doesn't know what Rovi was, because now it's TiVo and it's owned by DTS Xperi. another one of our awesome clients, by the way. But Rovi was Macrovision TV Guide. So for those of you who are, born after 1990, and I know some of you are that, you might not know what that is. And TV Guide first was a magazine that told you how to find your shows and what time they were going to be on day of the week. That was actually printed and sold at the grocery store, or you got it in the mail. Then it moved to digital search. And so Rovi owned the original patent around search, right, Nathan? And so by the time we got there, of course, set top and TV everywhere and all of these concepts were changing. People were cutting the cords or whatever they call it to cable at the time. And so Aria was there helping create change through leadership development, coaching, change management, et cetera. And one of the things we were privileged to do was the high potential program. And Nathan was identified as one of the high potentials. So here starts the journey of me underestimating this human. And then we had some weird circumstances that year you were in the program. And for those of you who have never been in a high potential program, you have to be nominated by executives in the company, usually a program in a company Rovi side, which at the time was about under $1 billion in revenue, right? It's about 700, 800 million in revenue. So it was appropriate for us to have about 20 people. So that's about 4 or 5 cohorts of people who are usually together for about a year, sometimes a little bit more, depending on the company. And the executives help us determine what kind of challenge we could give these amazing people that will help the business, but of course, put them through a process where they have to develop their skills as a leader because we're preparing them to be promoted. So let's just be clear here that when Nathan was asked to be in that program, our goal was to develop people for the future. We wanted them to be the next set of vice presidents, basically, in the company. And so he was in a group and his group started falling apart. I think you were probably a good 5 or 6 months in, right? You had chosen your project, you were meeting. And by the way, everybody, this is on top of the day job. So this is not, you don't get time off to do this. You're working, but you're also having classes, content, reading, materials. It's almost like a little bit of a mini MBA because you're doing business case work with your group. And Nathan's group, I think we started with 5 or 6 people.
We start with 7, but yes.
7 people. And I don't know what the first domino to fall was. Was it Lucian?
It was Lucian. Yep. He passed away, unfortunately. And that there was a lot of guys that came from MySpace, and these guys worked hard, played hard. And Lucian, just had some health issues, and we're like, okay, man, if you need to take some time off, he's like, nope, I'm going to power through. I'm good. And unfortunately, yeah, he passed away, and that was really unfortunate. Kind of a huge shock, right? I mean, it was someone you were working with every day. And then from there, the org changes and it really shrunk down.
I think that he just underestimated that, but it was painful. So everybody listening and watching, I don't think we can do an adequate job on this podcast today telling you what a shock it was to lose Lucian. Beyond a business issue, it was just horrible for everyone involved. He was an amazing human. The group was then kind of rocked. And then, like Nathan said, all of a sudden there were a number of business changes, and a few of the members of his group were a part of a layoff. Which was completely shocking again to the system. And then I think at least one person just kind of dropped out, leaving Nathan alone. And as the person driving with the executives the program, my suggestion was that we give Nathan the option of joining another group. And you chose to finish alone.
I had a great mentor as well. We can shout out our eBay friend, but yes, I basically was like, we put in a lot of work. I have great ideas, let's finish this. And yeah, finished it, presented alone to the whole SLT and our C-suite, and it actually was well respected and actually got implemented as a actual product. So it was really cool.
So I just, again, you being humble, I want everybody to understand that all the groups presented. So the other groups were intact and they presented. Nathan did his alone, and then his idea was chosen. Some of the other groups did not have their ideas implemented. I think one of the other groups had it tested, but then not implemented. So you crossed the finish line and actually won the race for all intents and purposes. And so from a character standpoint, everybody, that changed the game, not only for myself, but even the other executives. I remember us sitting, Nathan, after you left the room of the presentation and hearing them do the judging process. And some of the executives who were more new to the process, I do remember them saying, wait, stop, what just happened? Like, this guy just did this. And we talked about character. And the reason I mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to make sure we talked about it, is that then I started seeing you in a different way and hearing when you would make a reference to some of your side things. I knew I had to double click if I had the chance with you, because everybody, I knew he's not a self-promoter. And so there was clearly more going on. And then what has proven out since then, Nathan, is I think you have this amazing, not just an opportunist, but I think you're really good at looking and finding things that are not just interesting things to invest and spend your time and energy in. I think you're good at identifying things that are truly a good idea. Now, I'm sure that you've had your dogs. I'm sure you've done some things where you don't say that, but there's also a fearlessness seemingly about you. So if that's not true, we can talk about it, but I just,
You're right.
I mean, you aren't afraid, right? You are not, something happened in your life. Maybe.
Well, even the failures you learn from, right? I mean, that's a huge piece of kind of progressing. And look, I just turned 40 in December. And so it's kind of, you feel like you're getting older, but I'm like, I still feel like some of my best friends in New York are, in their 20s and 30s still. And I want to hear their ideas. I want to, my little brother went to Cornell, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, what's the next big thing, right? So I love to stay kind of at the forefront, and even at T-Mobile, while I run just one biggest dish account, my focus really is on this side project with Web3, and that goes back to another company, and actually why I moved to Seattle. We can talk about around digital currencies, and something also I knew nothing about that I've come to learn a lot about, both good and bad. So.
Yeah, we can talk about, let's talk about that. CoinMe. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was explaining, so in New York with TiVo at the time, Rovi TiVo, really if you look at projections of set-top boxes and how people are viewing content, it's okay. The model is like a nosedive, right? I mean, people are going to start using OTT platforms. They can start customizing. They don't have to stay the traditional route of paying for all these services that they don't use. And so it's like, okay, well, this is getting stale. Ad revenue is going to start drying up. Time to look for something new, right? There's two models. One is the rust and vest, like, okay, well, let's just hang on and stay stagnant. And the other one is, especially when you're young, you can take a lot of risk reward. So a buddy of mine, Neil Berquist, started the first licensed Bitcoin ATM company in the US called CoinMe. And he had been for years telling me about this, and part of it in New York. I had a couple of our buddies in fintech being like, yeah, this is a great opportunity to learn, and I should have listened a little bit more because those guys are all multimillionaires now. But the point is, and I love going to their weddings because they definitely remind me of what I could have had, and great opportunities. But moved here to Seattle, worked for this company, and we actually had the 31st floor of the Columbia Center Tower, which I'm looking at through the lake here out my window. We had the whole 31st floor, and literally that was the old Napster headquarters. And once Napster kind of went away, they had this open space. And so Neil calls me and he's like, hey, you should come build a sales team for me. And like, I've done the startup thing before. I'm not sure, coming from corporate, I really want to go to a small company. And we talked about this before, like the big company versus startups models, very different people. And so I came out and I flew out just to check it out, and it was amazing. Like the space was amazing. He's like, build your team here. I'm like, so okay, Bitcoin, like what is this actually like? Who were we targeting? He's like, you tell me. Like, so I created 35 different channels. We targeted from institutional investors to working with endowments, working with just a lot of different opportunities. And ironically, we also work closely with paying ransoms, like ransomwares, and work closely with the FBI and DHS, Secret Service, because we had a money transfer license, which is extremely rare. And even being in cryptocurrency, like Washington State and New York are the two hardest states, right? And so I was like, okay, this sounds like something I know nothing about that I need to learn. So jumped in, built the team here, and it was great. We learned a lot, both good and bad, as far as like, good players, bad players, all this space. But then also we did a partnership with Coinstar. And so Coinstar is literally at grocery stores. They have 22,000 machines across the US. You'll see them in the front of the grocery store. You put your change in, convert it. You can buy gift cards. They also were trying to figure out a new monetary revenue stream. Previously, they were owned by Outerwall as a parent company. They owned Redbox, another company called Eco ATM, where in malls you basically return used devices like phones and tablets. They give you money. A lot of fraud in that space, not ironically. And so, it really became a part where it's like, okay, well, now let's focus on compliance. Let's really make sure we're doing the right thing. And it was a great, run there of learning something new. I'm still friends with Neil and the team, and that was a great experience to be part of a startup. Although I would say, coming from TiVo, where you have for a nice lunch in New York, it's over $100 for two. You go for a lunch here in Seattle, and it's like, can we expense this? Like, where our budgets are so your runway, you're a starving startup, which is so both amazing and scary at the same time. But it's still doing well, and continuing to really work with those guys on the side and cheer them on, and then jump back to T-Mobile for more of the corporate stability again, but still, helping these guys on the side. And we actually had a Web3 event here in Seattle last week, and I brought in Sung, who's the head of BD there, to be one of our panelists, and Neil came as well. And yeah, it was just a great way to show that, we're part of the Seattle community, and this is something exciting we're trying to educate and help people with. So
yeah, just more. How many cool things have we now? At least we're like on number 5, I think.
Well, the last thing I say about CoinMe, which was cool, is like we were talking about just random things about different experiments, and one of them was remittances, helping people send money across borders. In Western Union, where it takes days and it costs a huge percentage for people to do, especially for small amounts of money. The president of Honduras flew us down, met with his Minister of Technology, Minister of Treasury, and for a couple of days we're down there, where it's like, help us not be Venezuela, help us not be Argentina. Like, how can we get ahead of problems that are facing us? And we were from Seattle, like the experts, to come down and help them understand how things work, how simple it is, all the regulatory pieces, which are very important, compliance. There's some great stories there of, again, being part of a startup, but continuing education, learning something brand new, and also helping other people understand something that they're sort of scared of. Like, I don't understand this, so I'm not even going to learn. It's like, no, it's actually very simple. Let me help you understand and see how we can help each other, so.
Yeah. Do you know what your parents did, or what happened in your life that like formed this, set of values that you have that allow you to, I feel like I've witnessed you being resilient, but also overriding whatever fear-based narratives might stop a person, from going for it. Like, do you know
that's a great question. And it's funny, my dad went to Stanford, and his dad, my grandfather, who was a huge influence in my life, and he built the whole west side of Maui after he retired, and just a great guy. And my dad, like, even in college, like, they told him like he couldn't make the football team, so he played rugby. And I think all his injuries today are still from playing rugby at Stanford, right, back in the day. And but to your point, I think a lot of it, both my dad and mom had they weren't afraid to say no. They were willing to try something new, and a lot of different new things. And we even, I mean, when I was growing up, they bought this property in Oregon, Southern Oregon, that they made like, and this is not because of Y2K, but like off the grid, right? This whole amazing house that had, natural water flow. It had solar panels. It was completely off the grid, just 80 acres of just a fun, and I'm the oldest of 6 in my family. So me and my siblings, and we're close today. Like we all talk daily. We're just like a great kind of different sibling units. And we're all very different, right? Like I was a runner, my brother played football, sister played volleyball, little brother played karate, like just all over the place as far as different personalities. And that complements us, and
Yeah.
we all have like a different perspective to contribute. And I think that's part of what my parents encouraged. And yeah, it I think is working.
I think it definitely is working. But it's a mindset, right? Like, even just the story of you finishing the Rovi thing, most people would not have done that.
Yeah, and that, I mean, in hindsight, I'm glad we made that decision. And like I said too, it's kind of ironic that even after I left the company to join the startup, that product being implemented as kind of the one new product, and listening to earnings call, right, talking about like, and kept renaming it, and I'm like, that's my idea, and like it's the one success story. So it's fun to think of things like that actually do work. And hindsight's 2020. So when you look back and it's something that you're a part of, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say it's also funny. I think the first day that we had we went to CES in Vegas as a team, right? Part of our leadership discovery program. And I think the first morning I went for a run, and one of our ad sales clients was talking about doing a deal with another partner, spending $500,000. And I was like, why don't you give us a try? We can do, something similar, and got this deal done. So the first day we show up, it's like, I just closed this big deal this morning, right? I mean, so it's like you're saying, the connections, the people, it's people really appreciate that. And part of, having Samsung and LG as partners in Korea, they would go with someone who has better rates, logically, but instead you fly there, you meet them in person, you go play golf with them at 3 a.m, you take them to dinner. That's the relationship. They're like, even though you're not the best option from a finance perspective, it's that relationship and the, communication and trustworthiness. They really trust you. And I think that's something that I've definitely tried to build up and appreciate, and, never burn a bridge, try and keep, leverage the relationships. And I mean, even today I talked to 2 old colleagues that are, old colleagues that are calling in favors or asking questions. And it's a two-way street, and I really appreciate having that as something that I feel has a huge value.
Let's, if you don't mind, let's talk about something that didn't work.
Okay. Running. So the whole reason I wanted to go to a big school like Stanford was to be a big, runner. Then you start realizing, okay, well, here's your level and here's everyone else's level. So went to a Division III school in Oregon called Willamette, and had a great experience. Like I said, it actually provided a better experience because I was able to join multiple other parts, across the university, and make friends with different temperaments, talents, convictions that you're able to learn and grow from. And so that was definitely, running was a huge thing that was a struggle as far as having so much passion and wanting to go fast, but knowing that there's limitations. And even in the marathon, I mean, we moved up, and a bunch of us, because we couldn't be fast anymore, it's like, well, let's do a couple marathons, and have done double-digit marathons of all around the US and the world, actually. And that's part of it, where it's like, okay, now I've accepted the fact that I'm not going to be a Olympian in the marathon or any race, but it's that's something that was definitely mentally I'm there, but physically not there. So that was one. There's some other failures that are out there. I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of the failures, and part of it too, is identifying when it's not working early so that you can pivot quickly. And then when it is working, double down and, figure out how to replicate. Or I'd say too, part of it is friends. So another failure is there was a company in New York, which a lot of people know about, not the company, it was called Magnesis. So we had a social member club where we're trying to figure out whether we want to be like a Soho House, which is like a members club, or we wanted to be like a membership club, like with a credit card. Basically, it was a black Magnesis card that was a, you could basically copy your any other card and use it as a metal card, right? Because this is back when the Amex Centurion card, the black card was popular. And we invested in this company. Billy McFarland was running it. And so we had some great times for the first couple of years. And then Billy spun off and did the Fire Festivals festival, which failed. Now he's doing a second one, which we'll see how that goes. But basically, that was another failure where both good and bad. I mean, I don't write it off as a failure because I actually had some great experiences, made some amazing friends, but also met some other people that are common names on the bad side, like Martin Shkreli, who also went to jail, and Anna, who was living in the townhouse we had before, who was a fake German heiress. And there's both amazing stories, but also terrible stories, right? And you realize that really helped me also define, especially in New York, who the good people are, who are actually working towards something. They're just good people, even if they fail, versus people that are trying to cut corners and, you know, they're scammers, they're opportunists. And that really helps kind of give you that perspective. And I think New York was great for that, because there's an old saying, like, coming from Los Angeles before, you know, people in LA, you know, they'll stab you in the back, you'll never see it coming. And in New York, like, it's in the front, you'll see it coming. And, you know, it's very radically transparent is what Ray Dalio says. He's the biggest hedge fund, Bridgewater, out in Connecticut. So yeah, radically transparent. That's a good way to describe New Yorkers. So
so I just want to pause for a second.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful. And everybody watching and listening, I asked that question about failure on purpose because I could have bet, if we were gambling in Vegas, that Nathan A would not do what most people do if I ask a failure question. First of all, you didn't flinch. And the reason that's important, everybody, is because when we have unresolved issues around failure, like if you get fired or whatever failure feels like to people, if they don't resolve it, it's sitting in their body. So asking that question for some people would have felt really, really bad. Full transparency, I knew this man most likely does not have that. And you did what I probably also I want to just point it out, because it was, for me, predictable for you, Nathan, which is why I knew it would be safe to do it here for everyone's learning, is that I believe, because your mindset is a growth mindset, and because you look at literally every opportunity as learning, not in a trite cliche kind of way, that's actually how you function, that you wouldn't get stuck in that, right? Like you're not carrying some weird, like, personal identity baggage is what I call it, right? When we attach whatever failure or bump in the road to our identity, and it starts to be heavy on us and creates all kinds of things, right? It can create imposter syndrome. It can create all those things. And what you just demonstrated was a growth mindset. And we didn't plan this, everybody. I didn't tell him I was going to do that. Just so those of you who are watching, you should be able to identify that, first of all, for everyone listening and watching, but also, Nathan, for you to take back to T-Mobile, and you can teach this to other people if you already are not. When you're interviewing people, when you're, you know, looking at people to be on your team or potential customers, it's important to see how people process things that didn't work.
Yep.
And if they're carrying it, right? If some people carry it for their whole life. I spend time trying to help people get rid of that. So hallelujah, you're not really carrying a lot of it around, even though some of it I'm sure stings. Even the Fire Festival thing, watchers, listeners, if you don't know what that is, you better Google it, because I mean, there's a whole Netflix documentary on, it's a mess. It was a mess. And
I'm glad my answer, though, Chris, wasn't when you asked me to help get you and your friends into a Facebook party and Hulu party and Roku at CES. I'm like, yes, I can do it. And I'm like, how many people? Okay, now I got to call in. Like, it all worked out. So that wasn't a failure, but it could have been.
Yeah, because you're the guys who got somebody tickets for what? The hardest show on Broadway, 20 tickets or some crazy thing.
Yeah, he was also part of our club at Rovi. But yeah, that was another part of the Magnesis thing where we had Hamilton tickets, right? Many of them, and sort of you realize, wait a minute, this is too good to be true. And sure enough, it was. And you learn from that. So.
Yeah, you do learn some of us learn from it anyway. I guess some people do not.
And the point too, there is like, I mean, and that's where you learn too of like friends associations, whether it's someone that this person has a lot of talent, I want to invest in whatever they're doing next, versus someone you're like, this person is cutting corners and, sure, they look successful now, but this is someone that you don't want to be a part of in the future. So I'd say more so than like company initiatives. I mean, I see a lot of startups through a lot of friends. And you bet on the person and you'll always succeed there. So.
Cast a vision for us. What are your aspirations? What's the future hold?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a blast right now at T-Mobile. Like I said, Dish is building out, the fourth biggest network, phone network here in the US for 5G. They had to cover 70% of the US in June. This is all public. And they accomplished that. So now we're kind of trying to see what their next ambition is with all the spectrum they're holding. But yeah, I'd say also T-Mobile, we have 75,000 employees. Campus is great. They give us free lunches during the day. So I'm working from home today, but it's a great place to be, some great people. And I'd say too, in grad school, some friends worked for T-Mobile. This is almost 20 years ago, and they're still here today. So meanwhile, I've jumped around to some other companies, both startups and large companies. And I was like, wait a minute, like there must be something about this loyalty, and sure enough, it creates a great work-life balance after acquiring Sprint. And that's really why Dish is my customer. So in order for T-Mobile to buy Sprint, they had to divest Boost Mobile with about 10 million customers to Dish, so that Dish had those prepaid customers. And so, yeah, it's just been a blast. And I just flew back from Denver. Well, I was in Europe for 2 weeks, came right back from vacation straight to a work meeting in Colorado with Dish, and then just got back here. So it's good to be back. Beautiful Seattle day, looking at the lake here. And yeah, I can't complain. So.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
Although California, I'm envious as well. That was the best part of moving to California right after grad school. I mean, the weather and yeah, it was definitely a great place to be too.
It is pretty good here. I would have to agree with that. Okay, well, awesome. Hopefully everybody listening and watching, you got some nuggets here, because if I could duplicate someone's attitude and really that fearlessness to try a lot of things and not be afraid to kind of have all these diverse experiences and take some risks, I would put it in a bottle and sell it. So Nathan, maybe that's our next thing, is we need to figure out how to do that.
Have you seen the new Elon Musk cologne perfume he just sold? It's called Burnt Hair.
No. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I'm gonna say thank you for now, and I'm assuming sooner or later we'll have a part 2, because I'm sure you are cooking up some things in the background that'll be worthy of more time to capture the learning. So I'm super grateful, Nathan, that you took the time to be with us.
No, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, as always.
All right. So, all right, everybody. I will see you in the next episode of And Then I. And until now, let's do this. What are you waiting on? Do great things. Bye.